and having a 5-year-old that's, just starting, or she's been playing for three years or so, how important is positive reinforcement? Because at the end of the day, whether you're playing at the mite level, you're just starting, or you're playing in the NHL, these are human beings, right? And they need to be told that they're doing something right along the way. Because you see, and I hear it all the time, and you have these coaches that it's always negative, and if it's always negative, it becomes a job at a young age, and that's when you lose interest, and that's when, you don't want to have that responsibility on your hands of a kid quitting the sport because it's always been negative. And like I've really learned that the last couple of years, especially, like, kids look forward to it, and you got to keep it positive for them. And yeah, I mean, you got to hold your kids accountable, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to put your arm around a kid too and lift them up a little bit.
100%.
Especially now.
Oh yeah, because there's so much rust in there, not just in the physical side of things, but the mental side of things.
100%. Yeah.
And one of the things that I've heard so many times, I've heard coaches say, these are evolutionary coaches, and I'm going to bring up NHL coaches as a comparison ratio. Most of the best teams out there that are at the NHL level right now, if you pick the top 2 or 3 or 4 teams out there, and, you got Carolina, you got Tampa, you got the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you look at the type of coaching that they have. And one of the things I've heard with my own ears, those head coaches of those squads, I've heard them say that whenever I need to help or give my team shit or tell them they've done something wrong, that's what I start off with. But I also give them options on what they could do to succeed. And I finish off with the positive on something they've done that same day or 2 hours before. So I'm giving you shit because you did this, you shouldn't have. You're outside our parameters, you made a mistake. And the other thing is, mistakes can be fixed, even if they're multiplied. If that same player makes the same mistake every time, we need to find out why. You can't be digging and giving them so much crap and not giving them options or wondering how it develops. It's not the action itself, it's how everything develops. And then when the action takes place, how do we fix it? Like, what do we do to help you, to give you options? When they hear options, you don't want to say to a player, okay, like, I'm a righty. So in my mind, I'm the best shooter and passer in the world, and all right-hand shots are. Yeah, I'm just joking. But if I'm a righty and I'm working with you, Nelly, because I know you're a lefty, should I change you to a righty because I feel like righties shoot the best and I shoot the best? No. So we got.
I'm the same side you're all right, Turkey. I'm a righty.
You're a righty. Oh, I thought you were. Oh, you always shot left. Sorry. But
that's how bad my shot was.
No kidding. Holy shit. But you get what I mean? We're not gonna change. We're not going to make a big change. What we're going to do is make a suggestion to modify or enhance. We're not going to change something. I've found that over these past 10 years, you'll say, hey, I want to change your pattern. I want to change your stride. I want to change your shot. No. We're just going to do what's best for you. We're going to modify. How do I get more power into that? How do I get you to fully extend your stride leg when you're taking a shot or when you're taking a skating stride? How do I get you to return it back straight in a straight line instead of kicking your heel up and then bringing it back in? Like, how am I going to do that stuff? What drills can I generate that are fun because you're going to improve, and it's easy for you to apply the suggestions and modifications that we're making so that it helps every little bit. But if that player's not willing to improve, they don't want to, then whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we'll stick with what you got, and then we'll just try and change your mind. Not change. We'll try and modify how you think to make sure that you make a better decision with your options.
So here's the question from Ben TZG. Hey, Tim, you coached me a couple years ago. How do I get the awkward feel from shooting with the inside leg instead of off the Flamingo?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of different things. If that, Benny, go to my website, timturkhockey.com, and it'll talk about the stride formation release, and there's a few drills that are on this Instagram. My Instagram, if you go back, you'll see the stride formation drills that are there. But if you're a righty, when your right leg goes back, and the funny thing is, this question that I see here, what do you suggest could be the most effective shot in hockey? Well, it's not the type of release that you do. It's how you look when you shoot. and combine that with the type of release that you take. So when you do the Flamingo, number one, you got to stay low. But when you get your stride leg back, righty's right leg back, lefty's left leg back, that lowers your posture automatically. So to answer your question, how do you get good at something? You got to practice in that formation. You got to kick your right leg back if you're a righty, or push as you're taking a skating stride and synchronize your release with that. It might change how things feel and look, or it might take away power. The first thing you lose when you're thinking about doing something is you lose power and timing. But then you do it at a slow rate of speed. There's an iconic Hall of Fame defensive coach that I worked with years ago in Carolina Hurricanes. And he said, you know, doesn't matter if you're a right-hander or if you're a left-hander. If you want to improve something, you always start at a slow rate of speed to get the feel of what it is and get the motion pattern. And then as it feels better, you can add more power and more speed to it, as long as you're repeating what that feel is based on the information you're getting from coaches like us to work on those patterns. So that's what I would suggest. Just try and do more of it. But there's a lot of stuff on my Instagram feed and on my websites that will help you to work on those drills.
I just saw another question come through, which is a pretty good question. How do you connect with a kid that thinks they know everything?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. So one of the things that I do, if it's a coach that's asking that question,
I'm sure it's a coach, yeah.
Yeah, the first thing that I do is I look at the upbringing.
Exactly.
I look at the parents, the parental interaction before I make any suggestions on things. Like the one thing that I've been known to do in years past, I haven't had to do it in a while now, but a lot of times I do stuff in small groups or private or semi-private sessions. I do team stuff too. And you'll know the player that thinks they know everything because they'll do a motion pattern or an action and they'll automatically look to where their parents is for some sort of, you know, like, yeah, great job, like from the boards. Or they'll be shaking their head and doing something in the stands. And if you're that kind of parent, that's okay. You can parent your players any way you want. But if I were there and I see that, I don't allow the parents in the rink. If you want your kid to do sessions with me or you want me to coach your kid, I see that I'm not getting any approval because you're here and they want approval from you.
Right.
You know, they're looking at, that's just one suggestion. The other thing is when you have someone that thinks they know it all, no matter what their age is, or they can't do no wrong, or they have an excuse for everything, introduce them to a mindfulness coach. Introduce them to someone that can understand where their thought process is coming from, but you don't want to single them out. You don't want to challenge them with anything. Maybe you can support them and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. Do you have any reason why you think you can or cannot do this, or talk to me for the way that I see that you are? And you're communicating with them. And that's the best, one of the best things is to open up to that player. Doesn't matter if they're 8, 9, 10 years old. Say, hey, this is what I noticed. And you know what, right now at this stage, if you're going to continue to be that way, my opinion is it's going to be rougher to live out your dreams. It's going to be so much harder to do so. You know, I had a kid come up to me, he was 12 years old. And this kid, all coaches that are listening in on this, and Nelly, you're going to know this. Man, it doesn't matter where you go, there's always one. And you blow the whistle, and then it doesn't matter if you're a special guest or not, you'll always have that one person that's got to shoot that puck before they come over. You know, even though I read the riot act and I'm like, listen, we got to save time here, man. We got to save time. Don't do what you normally do. When you hear the whistle, come over right away. So there's always a kid that would do that. There's always a kid that would shoot a puck after. And there was one kid that did it like a lot. Way back years ago, he was a 12-year-old. So finally, you know, I'm just standing there and I'm like, I'm new. You know, this is like 12, 14 years ago. I'm new. And the kid comes over to me and he's like, hey, Coach Turkey, what do I need to do to make it to the NHL? I'm like, well, you hear the whistle, go leave the pucks and get your toilet over here as fast as possible and be right beside the coach every single, not just me, be right beside the coach every single time. You know, like change that culture. Don't touch the puck because this is me talking to a 12-year-old, because in my opinion, the players who have the most focus and the most patience are the ones who improve the quickest. Doesn't matter if it's team situation, individual situation, but it's up to you. But if you don't want to keep messing around, maybe that distraction, when you're getting distracted now, sometimes distractions need to happen because people have the attention deficit disorders, and that's understandable. But that means you got to find out what turns their crank to make them understand that they need to be focused. You might just have to give them separate challenges on the side, and that's another story. But this particular player stopped that. And then all of a sudden, the coach comes to me the week later. I'd go into the team. Says, "What did you say to that kid?" I said, "Well, if he asked me what it takes to make the NHL." I said, "Well, every time you blow a whistle, be the first one in." He's like, "Holy crap." He says, "Man, we tell to all my players." I'm like, no. You know, like that's just the one kid that does that. And that kid's wearing a C. He wears number 91.
Who's that?
In Tampa. 91 in Tampa.
Nice.
So, you know, you never know what's going to happen. And then sometimes a 12-year-old just clicks. A 9-year-old clicks. A 16-year-old clicks. Then you get like we were talking about, the guys that are just persevering, that don't get the opportunity they feel they deserve, you know, and they just keep it going and keep it going. Then they're 28, 29 years old, and they're lost at sea, and they're like, I still have the passion, but I want it. And then all of a sudden the door opens up, or it doesn't. What'd you say? Right through the door, you know, get ready to go. That's another night and another beer. But I'm telling you, like, if you can find out what makes these players click when you're coaching them, you know, this one kid that knows it all, he might feel like PlayStation or Xbox games is going to dictate how he plays hockey. You know, there's so many, he might, and then if you find out what PlayStation game he likes, then you make him that character, and you say, hey, that character's going to listen every time I blow the whistle, and they're going to be an example to others. You know, you can't start a freaking video game with a big, huge cannon. You got to start with the little gun, and then you got to progress up to the big cannon. And that's what we do with these players. We got to get them started out, basic fundamentals, and then get them to progress into cannons or into Gatling guns and, you know, Sean Skinner type of stick handling.
But you said one word that really caught my attention, and it's something that I take a lot of pride in with my camps and clinics, and that's culture, right? At the end of the day, you have to protect that culture, and you have to protect that culture for your players, right? So if you do have a kid, and unfortunately it's becoming more and more of an issue, you know, there are kids that no matter what you do, right? Like, and it's unfortunate because you do the history and you do the background and you look where they come from, and it makes sense. But at the end of the day, if you have 15, 16 really, really good kids that are working hard, and you have that one kid that no matter what you do, it becomes almost cancerous, right? So I don't know the situation that you're in, or if you're coaching, or what level that the coaches that ask that question, what level you're coaching. But I mean, it's tough, right? Because you have to look out for your other players as well. You know, and we have to make tough decisions as coaches, right? And that's the hardest part, right? Like, you have to send a message. And sometimes if you send a message to that one kid that just for some reason he doesn't get it, it makes the other 15 or 16 kids really understand where you're coming from, and that you know that you're protecting them, and that, you know, it's going to open the eyes of those kids as well.